Good evening and welcome to the rundown. A Russian city remains under attack today. We have some idea as to who's doing the attacking and why. Gets a little nuanced. We're going to get into that. But it started about 6 hours ago, an attack on a major, not a major Russian city, but a Russian city nonetheless. I always mispronounce it, so let me read it as Belgorod. And that's important because I'm dyslexic, and then you put that together. I'm going to say Belgorod is the name of the city. And what's significant about this, and I think we should start with this is an offensive. This is not a counteroffensive. This is not a defensive action. This is an offensive action. It is combat that is occurring now in a Russian city. The Ukrainians have hit elements inside Russia before. It's been usually individual strikes. It's been against military targets. This is an entire Russian city that is currently under attack. Who's doing it? The initial and obvious guess would be the Ukrainians. I have no doubt in my mind that they're involved, but how and exactly what it means needs some going over. Now, we are going to have Ben Hodges on tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be talking General Ben Hodges, former commander of all U.S. forces in Europe, also former NATO commander of all NATO ground forces. Obviously, he knows a lot about this, and he's going to be very helpful. We're going to be talking to him tomorrow about NATO, about Russia, about the war, why the war is important, what Ukraine can do to win, and what this is going to mean going forward. Obviously, I think this is also going to dominate the discussion. So tomorrow, when we have General Benjamin Hodges on, we are going to be asking him about this. So who's doing it? It looks very much like it's Russians, believe it or not, but from where? From Ukraine. There is a legion called the Freedom from Russia Legion, or the Freedom of Russia Legion. It's been translated both ways. It is a, quote, Russian volunteer corps. It is some of Russia's most elite fighters that have actually been fighting on behalf of Ukraine. They have been fighting in Ukrainian uniforms. They've been fighting alongside with Ukrainians, but they're actually Russian. Now, we've had discussions before about volunteers from other countries in Russia, in Ukraine. Obviously, this legion has reported being treated with some suspicion amongst their Ukrainian brethren, but they believe that not only that the war is unjust, but that Vladimir Putin must be toppled. It is their goal to end the regime of Vladimir Putin. We'll get into what they've said about their goals and this so far. They have raised a flag in the town over the university, and as of 7 minutes ago, bombed the headquarters of the FSB in that region. That is obviously an attack on then the intelligence services for Russia, and is going to be some extraordinarily bad news for Putin. This brings the war in one way or another right onto Russian soil. Now, we've talked before about about Ukraine attacking targets inside Russia. I have long said, and we've talked with Commander McMillan about this, look, Russia started it, dropped some drones on Moscow, on Red Square, hit their parliament, they are committing acts of war, they are committing genocide. At what point? And he has repeatedly said why he thinks that's a bad idea, and I think he's right. It doesn't mean it's what I find most comforting, and I cannot even begin to comprehend the immense self-control that it takes for Ukraine to not do that when they've demonstrated they can. Having said that, it is important to NATO and a lot of their allies so far that they not attack within Russia proper. So what is this? Well, To the best of our understanding, this has not been confirmed. This is being reported by the New York Times and several other sources, but their belief is there are no Ukrainians involved in this. It is entirely the Freedom of Russia Legion. It appears like they may be wearing Ukrainian uniforms. Again, they are volunteers for the Ukrainian army. It looks like Russia is certainly trying to paint this as Ukraine. And again, this is where nuance comes in. It also looks like they have used Ukrainian equipment now if they go to Ukraine and say, we're going to take a little trip just across the border. Do you mind if we borrow some things? What do you think Ukraine's going to say? So we're obviously, there's going to be some discussions. And again, this is why I'm very glad we have General Hodges on tomorrow. Early morning, it's going to be worth it. We're going to ask him about this because, in my view, this is a game changer. I think it was a game changer, and Lance hates that term. I think even he would use it. I think it was a game changer when we saw the first strike anywhere near Moscow. Now we are seeing the first Russian city on fire. We have footage of it, and it's on our Discord, so I hope you will join us there and see. I mean, it's a significant attack. To the best of our knowledge, we have no reports of deaths. We only know of 8 injuries so far, but information is very hard to come by. It does look like clearly military installations and police installations have been hit. There are still drones attacking the city. Much of the city is just either on fire or in smoke. We do have, let me see if I've got one. We did have a footage of, it's hard to get this footage into this right now. We've got it on the Discord. But a lot of it is video, and it's grainy, and we've had problems getting it. I do have one I'd like to get in. Let me get that in. That we may not be able to get that one in either. Let me see if we've got it. No, I don't think we've got it. So we have a lot of footage on the Discord. A very large apartment complex with at least one wall badly damaged, or one side badly damaged. Honestly, it looks like Ukraine has looked like for the last few years, though not quite as bad. Again, this has just started. So let's take a look at, let's see what we're looking at and what we're talking about. Then I'm going to go into the live chat. I think there are a lot of important things to cover, and I may have missed something. The biggie is who's doing it, and it does look like the Freedom of Russia Legion. They have posted on Telegram. They've taken credit for it. They are flying a flag right now over, that would be why, the university, and it looks like they are attempting to take and capture the entire city. I would like to get Lance's view on that. He is not available right now. He will be on tomorrow. That would be odd. And the reason why, I am not a military expert, I do know that the general consensus is that Russia is no longer really capable of any major offensives, and it may be that defending that city is going to be impossible. The Legion represents, or is represented by, only a couple of hundred members, we believe. They are all elite. They are the best of the Russian military, former Russian military. But there's only a couple hundred of them. I don't see how they can take an entire city, or at least hold it. And that hasn't really been the strategy, at least of Ukraine going forward. It's been much more smaller strikes and then retreating before there's a counterattack that wipes you out. They've been very successful with that. They've been a lot faster. They've been a lot more responsive. Staying in that city strikes me as not part of that overall strategy. But then again, this isn't actually the Ukrainian army, and they've got a separate agenda. Ostensibly, the goal of the Ukrainian army is not to topple the Russian government. The goal of this group is. So that's where we stand. We believe at this point there's been an order to evacuate the city. Order or no, we've got images of rows of cars of everybody just leaving. The other upside to this is Russia has been working very hard at keeping the true cost of the war a secret from its people. This makes it a lot harder. Those people are all going to go somewhere, and they're going to talk. This is extraordinarily bad for Putin, all other things aside. We'll get into that again in a minute. And again, we will have on, I really would have a lot of questions that I'd like to ask the general tomorrow when he comes on. This is probably going to be a significant portion of that interview. We hadn't wanted that, but this, again, does genuinely strike me as a game changer. So what are we looking at? Well, this is a map of Ukraine. Now, the occupied areas are down here in the heavy red. Russia is in the light red. Very rare are there any sort of attacks or anything that's actually happening in Russia. This has all been of the last 6 hours right here. And there's been considerable fighting. We know that there is, in fact, fighting. We don't know if it's police or military or what. I don't think anybody was expecting a military incursion here. So to the best of my knowledge, I don't know what kind of defensive military they had. So we know that there's been, so let's see, this one here is just clashes. We don't know. It's this military legion. Again, we believe at this point it is the Freedom of Russia Legion. We can't confirm it. I strongly doubt it is the Ukraine government, or sorry, the Ukrainian military and anything that's authorized for reasons we've discussed before. I think that's off the table. So the question is who's doing it and how much involvement does the Ukrainian government have? My suspicion is they have the maximum amount of involvement that they can give while still having plausible deniability. And that's basically like, oh, you took the trucks, you took the ammo, here's all our best weapons. Yeah, you're just going out for a beach day, have a good time, and they're on a pass. That's my suspicion. Like I said, as of just a few minutes ago, there was a separate, there are drone attacks. They're calling these saboteurs, infiltrators. They have claimed now control of at least one village. So the Freedom of Russia, and apparently members of the Russian Volunteer Corps say that they control the village of 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴, which is part of this region. So it's this area right here. This village apparently has been quote liberated, and they've been moving into, in the most recent attack on the FSB. Let's see, and that was again just minutes ago. Apparently Putin has been made well aware of this and is claiming that this is Ukraine. Multiple drones have come in. A number have been shot down, but the fighting appears to have gone. Okay, so it was residential. There was shelling, a significant amount of artillery, and again, I'm going to try one more time to snag one of the photos. There's an aerial photo from a helicopter of the entire town just smoking. I mean, again, it looks like what we've been seeing out of Ukraine, except for the first time since this started, it's Russia. So let's see. Yeah, so which one was, let me see if I can just find here real quick. Okay, so this is the center of the town. A drone strike here has struck the FSB building. We don't know the damage yet. We do know that this has been a staging area for some military attacks, and the thinking is that at a minimum, if it's worried about its own defenses, artillery attacks coming into Ukraine from this area is going to be dramatically reduced. So you can see, obviously, we've looked at this map many times, and we've seen red dots everywhere. We've seen, just massive attacks on cities that have been turned to rubble. This is not quite that, but it's a significant attack that is forcing the evacuation of all the civilians of that area. We know there's been significant damage so far to multiple buildings, and we know the battle is continuing, and it appears to be targeting also elements of the FSB, so that would be government infrastructure as well as military. And we don't know how many, but if it is just that legion, it can't possibly be more than a couple of hundred people. So what kind of... Okay, so now here's Kharkiv, and my understanding is Kharkiv does get routinely bombed from that area, so that would certainly eliminate, for the Ukrainian military, that would eliminate... I'm not sure if that showed up on the map there. There's Kharkiv. Now, I wonder if that says explosions in Kharkiv. So that was about 9 hours ago. But most of that, my understanding is, comes in from this area. So we could see, and again, so the heavy red here is areas that have been occupied by Russia in general. And I mean, there aren't any other real strikes in Russia. We've seen individual strikes, but certainly not a military incursion. So this is quite a stunning thing. As a reminder, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to have on former commander of all NATO ground forces, General Benjamin Hodges. He's going to be on to discuss the war in Ukraine. I think this is going to be playing pretty heavily in that. Now, I haven't kept up with the live chat, so I'm going to check the live chat really quickly. If you have a question or something, a comment, just quickly tag overtime on that, and that will make it a lot easier for me to see. But I saw somebody mention speculation, and I think it's we do want to try to understand what's going on, but we do want to try to keep speculation to a minimum. It does appear, the Freedom of Russia Legion has taken credit for this. They are capable of this. And Ukrainian military is staying away from it with a 10-foot pole, and I can see why. So I think it's credible, though we do not know for certain that they are the ones behind it, and it looks like a second group. And we had this discussion on the Discord, but I think one is a far-left group, the other is a far-right group. Both want to topple the current regime in Ukraine, in Russia. And it looks like both have been working together to that end. Again, the difference is they've been fighting with Russia almost since the start of the war, is my understanding. They joined as volunteers from Russia. They wear Ukrainian uniforms. They are Russian. And but their ultimate goal is the toppling of the Putin regime, whereas Ukraine's only real goal at this point is to recover all of their land and to never be invaded again. The toppling of the Putin regime would certainly go a long way towards that, but that doesn't mean that's their goal. So, what do you think about the theory that Ukraine sends some troops to Russia to keep Russian troops? I think that would be a good plan. The idea to make listen, the best defense is a good offense. The problem is Ukraine is somewhat handicapped by that because many countries in NATO do not want to see Ukraine engaging in offensive actions in Russia. And they need the help from NATO that they're getting. They need the NATO support and NATO's red line saying you're not going to use chemical or nuclear weapons. But they need that. So they've been holding back and been very careful about strikes that they've done in Russia. I would like to see them unshackled a bit more and able to do more offensive activities in Russia. Macmillan has said this repeatedly, and I think this is really very much worth understanding. The only way Russia's ever going to stop is if it's worth it to them to stop. Putin does not care about any human life that I can tell. If he can, I've seen no evidence of it. He is a former assassin. He's killed people himself. He clearly does not value Ukrainian lives, civilian lives, mothers, children. I've seen no evidence he cares about any of them. And I've seen no evidence that he cares about them when they're his own people's either. That's just what I see. If somebody would like to disabuse me of that notion, great, but I think you've got your work cut out for you. So given that, the question is, what's going to make him stop? Well, he can keep sending missiles over there till kingdom comes. So he's not going to stop until his own life is in jeopardy because his own people say, we've had enough. And whether it's the oligarchs, whether it's the military, I don't care who. I do not see that happening until there's military incursions, until Russians are feeling it and it's real for Russians. He's been pretty good at keeping it from being real from Russians. And I've got to tell you, and we're going to talk about this a week from tomorrow with Rick the Ukrainian. He's going to come on and he's going to talk to us about the interviews that he's been dubbing interviews of POWs and them saying, what they thought about the war, why they came in, and all of that stuff. And the reality is so many people have been kept from the reality of what this war is in Russia. They don't know what it's costing them. I think they would care if it did. I think that's why it's being kept from them. You can't keep this from them. This may or may not be the tipping point. Probably won't be, but might be. But events like this will be. I'd like to see more offensive actions happening in Russia. I know why Ukraine hasn't done it. We're going to talk to it. That's going to be one of my major questions about to General Hodges tomorrow as well, because I think he'd like to see it. I've seen a number of his interviews. He's talked about U.S. and other forces not committing to winning in a way that needs to be done, and I'd like to try to understand better how and why and what can be done about that, because more lives are going to be lost on both sides by sitting around saying that the status quo is okay and that it's okay for people to just keep dying as long as it doesn't escalate. I agree we don't want it to escalate. I strongly disagree with anybody who says, oh, Putin would never use nukes. I think he probably would. And you can be wrong about that only once, ever. Having said that, too many people have been dying for too long. And the only thing that's going to stop it is adding pressure to Putin. And the only thing that's going to do that, stuff like this. I don't think Ukraine... So to answer your question, no, I don't think the Ukrainians have been doing it. I'd like to see them do that, but no, I don't believe they have. All right, so yep, the civilians have been evacuating. I'll do a rundown in a minute, and then we'll call it, because we don't know a heck of a lot. This is likely to be the tipping point for the Russian front line. I think you're right. I think that's true. Well, and I think, okay, so, and I was listening to someone talking about, that they were asking Ben Hodges, actually, too, General Hodges, about trenches being dug in Crimea for the Russians, the Ukrainians coming in to liberate Crimea, which at this point seems inevitable and seems very likely to work. Now, if you're in one of these things, is it going to offer you a lot of protection? No, it'll offer you some. But psychologically, first of all, these are all the good troops have been used up or are now fighting Russia. The troops that they've got are the ones that have had 3 minutes of training, have had their cell phones taken away from them because they can't be trusted with them, and have been thrown out into the front lines because it's either that or a prison labor camp in Siberia. Those are the troops that they're using. And now it's going to spread. They're going to know the motherland has been invaded. While they're sitting there on the front lines of this dying, they're getting encircled. Now, this isn't actually, if you look at the map, this isn't encircled in any meaningful sense. But psychologically, if you're sitting here on this little almost island kind of area right here, and you're watching all of this happen, you're watching your own homeland start to get invaded. Yeah, I don't see, morale's already been low. We'll see. This may well be a tipping point. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I also wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't sufficient. But as I said before, the tipping point will look like this. It will be something like this. Now everybody on Putin's side, all the generals, cannot deny the war has now come to Russia. Again, the people who did this are not trying to free Ukraine. To the best of our understanding, it's not Ukrainians who did this. I have zero doubt the Ukrainians supported it, but I don't think they're the ones who did this. The ones who did this are trying to liberate Russia from its current regime. They'd like to see Ukraine freed. They don't believe this was a legitimate war. They hate this war, and they've been fighting on behalf of Ukraine. But it's still two different goals, different organizations. Having said that, if you're a general in Russia, there's no distinction. The Ukrainian war has now come to your home. Because if the war hadn't started in Ukraine, these guys wouldn't be able to do it. And all your troops wouldn't be tied up with an army that has been broken beyond repair. So Russia is weaker than it's ever been. China and Russia have territorial disputes, territories that Russia now owns, but probably could not defend if China tried to take them. Russia, I have to believe Russia is on the verge of collapse. This is the kind of thing that's the final nail in the coffin. We'll see. I think all of us are going to keep an eye on it. We'll be keeping an eye on it on our Discord. We will be asking General Hodges about it tomorrow, I guarantee you. And if the situation gets significantly worse, we'll stream live and let you know. But that's what we know so far. So I'll check. I haven't seen anything else in the live chat. Thank you to everybody for showing up. It was sudden, and we've been batting this around back and forth on the Discord, but I think at this point we know roughly what's going on. So as of about 6-7 hours ago, a incursion force of some kind appears to have come from Ukraine and entered a Russian town. They claim to have captured at least one village and have engaged in multiple firefights, artillery exchanges, drone attacks in another town. It appears to have calmed down, but there are still strikes. The most recent one that we're aware of is a drone hitting the FSB headquarters. All of the citizens have been told to evacuate. They are fleeing. We've got images of that. We've got images of the town just smoking and a number of buildings that have been destroyed. All that's going to be on our Discord, so come on down there, check that out. But at this point, despite the fact it did come from the Ukrainian side of the border, we do not believe it was Ukrainians. We believe it was a military force, a group of partisans who are for the overthrow, of the current Russian regime. They call themselves the Freedom of Russia Legion. They number probably a couple of hundred, we believe. They have taken credit for this on Telegram, and they have also raised their flag over the local university, and we believe they are responsible for it. We don't know if they're going to try to hold it. We don't know if Russia's going to counterattack, but it is the first offensive, genuine offensive, that has happened inside Russia since this war has started. That makes it really, in my view, a game changer. And let's see how it looks like. Yeah, well, there you go. And we're going to have to see how the rest of the world responds to this. But at present, we believe that members of this legion who had probably... they had access to Ukrainian equipment, probably with Ukrainian permission, took that equipment and attacked, but this was not an operation of the Ukrainian military. That's what we understand it to be, and I think that's probably most likely. Having said that, I think the military probably knew and certainly signed off on it, but it's not their operation, and they're going to stay out of it because of all the reasons we discussed earlier, and we'll discuss again with Benjamin Hodges. So I don't know if somebody's got the link to, I should have snagged the link before coming here, but if anyone's got the link to tomorrow's show, we're going to have on General Benjamin Hodges, former U.S. commander of all U.S. forces in Europe and former NATO commander of all NATO ground forces, is going to be on to discuss exactly, he wasn't coming on to discuss this, but like I said, I think we're gonna try to do a significant portion of our original interview to talk about what's going on in Ukraine and how does Ukraine end this. And I think this is going to dovetail into that discussion, but I think we're going to have that discussion with him because this is pretty big. So, let's see. If the Eastern Oblast starts to revolt, there's really nothing he can do. Do I think this may have been planned? I saw that question earlier, and then the other question, what about nukes? Those are both very good questions. So let me do my best to answer them. I don't have military background, but to try to deal with those questions, I think the planning of this has been minimal. If you're Ukraine, and you've got a bunch of Russians who are Russian elites who have been training with you, and they say, we're going to attack a city, let's organize that so we do it with your counteroffensive. My guess is you say, no. You do it when you want to do it, and maybe we'll give you a window of when might help. But that's it, and that's it both because you don't know if you can trust them, and even if you can trust them, you don't know if they're going to inadvertently leak it to Putin. The last thing they want to do is jeopardize what looks like it's going to be a very successful counteroffensive. So even if they could trust all of them, probably you don't plan it with them and you don't tell them. You give them a basic idea of like, look, if you want to do this, end of May, that might be a helpful time. But that's about the most you're going to say. And that isn't much that people haven't gleaned already would be a useful time for this. So I don't think this was planned with the Ukrainian military overtly. I do think the military knew ahead of time, and I think that there was equipment made available and with their complements. So that's the extent of it. I don't think anyone sat down and said, okay, let's plan this to go coincide with our offensive. That's an unnecessary risk. The offensive promises to be successful enough that why take something that's already going to work and add a risk to maybe make it a little bit better with a huge risk if the information gets out. So, no, I don't think it was planned. Nukes, I hope Hodges would answer this better than I, and Macmillan would answer this better than I. I'm going to give my answer that's the best based on what I've learned from at least Lance and a few others. But having said that, every now and then I do that, and then Lance says, no, my opinion's the opposite, and he knows better than I. But given that they're not here, my hope is that this reduces the chances that a nuclear weapon is going to be used, and the reason is because, and this is the only, and so when we talk about why has this been incremental, we've been incrementally giving Ukrainians better and better weapons. There's two good reasons for that. One, we want to see that they can use the stuff we've given them first before we give them everything off the the top grade material. But secondly, if we gave them everything we have that's the best we can give them first, and they do a massive counter-offensive, invade Russia, all this other stuff, it's such a dramatic overturn of events that the chances that chemical or nuclear weapons are going to be used goes up dramatically. If instead it's just incremental increases and incremental pressure against Putin, it's almost boiling frog. Things have just been getting worse and worse and worse to the point where if Putin says, okay, we're going to deploy nukes, instead of generals hearing, oh, thank God he's doing something to save our country, they're like, wait a minute, we're already, it's not going to change anything. At this point, you have to nuke one of our own cities, is what you're talking about. If they have over time been losing their faith in Putin as this drags on and just gets worse and worse and worse, humiliation after humiliation after humiliation, my suspicion is it decreases the chances that he will successfully deploy a nuclear weapon. He may still make the order. My hope is he's going to find a bullet to the head before anybody actually does that. And by the way, and we've talked about this on the show before, and we should probably do its own show just on this. Both in the U.S. and in Russia, the order has been given to deploy nuclear weapons before, and that order has been ignored. And every time it has been correct to ignore it. The movie War Games, for those of you who don't know, is based on an incident that actually happened. And it was, oh dear Lord, it wasn't the vice president, but it was, it may have been the chief of staff. President's chief of staff received the order to wake up the president. We had 8 minutes before we were all going to die in a ball of fire with the understanding that the order was going to be given to launch nuclear weapons. I said, well, have we seen these missiles coming in from Andrews Air Force Base? And I said, no, we haven't seen them, but we know they're coming. He said, yeah, I don't think Russia would do this. Let's wait. He decided not to wake the president. Turned out. So, yeah. And Russia has given the order to deploy nuclear weapons in the past, and their generals have refused to. So we'll see. And by the way, we don't know that they'd work. Most of these have triggers deliberately that have to be replaced every 7 years or however long, or else they won't work. And that's deliberate. And if they're not maintaining the proper maintenance on these things, do you want to guess if they are? Have you seen their tanks? Do you know what they're going into battle with right now? I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think we're about to... shit's about to pop off, I think. So we'll see. I think we need to be closer to the end of this than the beginning. And I think that means, if that means Ukraine has to be kind of let off the leash, and they have to be given the weapons that can actually strike inside Russia. And if that's what they have to do, this has to stop. Anyways, that's where we are. Thank you all for joining us. General Benjamin Hodges, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff pertaining to Ukraine. But that's, I think this is going to be the biggie on it. Thank you all for joining us. I look forward to seeing you then. And if anything significant changes, we'll be back to let you know. Otherwise, you'll see all of this and other updates on the Discord. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow with Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. Good night, all.